My name is Heidi Klum, and I'm a 34-year-old hairdresser. I've always loved my work. It's where I feel most alive, transforming people's looks and sometimes even their spirits. These days, I work as the chief stylist at a salon that my husband Michael manages. He's 3 years older than me, and we met through a mutual friend. Back then, I was drawn to his warm personality and charming smile. He made me laugh, and I really thought we'd grow old together. We got married 4 years ago, full of hope and dreams. But that dream started unraveling pretty quickly. You see, Michael's mother, Victoria, had raised him alone since he was in junior high. She often reminded everyone of that fact, and while I admired her strength, she seemed to believe she still had full control over every step her son took, even as an adult. When Michael and I announced our engagement, she made her presence known in every way possible. She pushed her opinions on everything: our wedding, our honeymoon, the house we chose, even the interior design. And I mean everything. I had imagined picking out flowers and walking down the aisle in the dress of my dreams. I had dreams for our new home, too. But every time I voiced my opinion, she'd shut me down. "If you defy me now," she once said, "what kind of mother-in-law do you think I'll be? You don't need some flashy dress. Honestly, your parents didn't teach you anything useful, did they?" I wish I was exaggerating, but no. She insulted my parents, belittled me, and made sure Michael stayed silent through it all. And when he did try to stand up for me, she'd go into dramatic mode, questioning his loyalty like we were in a soap opera. My parents were concerned, and I can't blame them. My dad pulled me aside and said, "Heidi, maybe take a step back. Think it through." But I was already in too deep, and Michael, to his credit, apologized with sincerity. "I know my mom's difficult," he told me, "but I want to build a future with you. Please give us a chance. I'll protect you." Back then, I believed him. I really did. So, we went ahead with the wedding. Every little detail screamed Victoria's taste, not mine. Even the home we moved into was decorated like some old Victorian catalog she'd clearly picked out herself. My mom whispered to me on our wedding day, "Sometimes it's better to lose the battle and win the war. Let her feel like she's won. One day, she might owe you for this." I nodded. I wanted peace. I wanted to believe it would all work out. Fast forward 4 years. Michael and I now have 3 salons up and running. We built this business from nothing, and it's grown faster than either of us expected. On the outside, we look like a power couple, but behind closed doors, things were broken. Michael had changed, or maybe I had changed, gotten stronger, more aware. Either way, the man who once called me his muse now rolled his eyes when I spoke. He called my education basic and told me I should be grateful I had hairdressing skills, since that was the only reason I was still valuable. Nice, right? Every time I tried to talk about our business, how to manage staff, how to improve services, he brushed me off. "I leave all that to you, Heidi," he said once. "That's your domain. You don't have the background to do anything else." His words stung. But the worst part was the way he started ignoring me. At first it was subtle. He'd come home late, say he was out networking or at business dinners. Then it became more obvious. He'd skip meals I cooked, walk past me without a word, stay overnight at his mother's apartment, which was conveniently on the floor below ours. Yeah, she had moved in downstairs. You can imagine how much fun that was. Whenever I asked him why he was giving me the cold shoulder, he'd say I was overreacting. But I knew something was off. I kept trying to make things better, though. Cooking dinner, preparing his bath, waiting up late into the night. Anything, really, to stop the silence that ate away at me. "And Victoria?" She added fuel to the fire. "You're a terrible wife," she told me once, laughing. I knew it wouldn't last. Her words echoed in my mind every night I waited for Michael to come home. I kept wondering, what did I do wrong? Why is he acting like this? Then something happened that changed everything. One afternoon at the salon, I was eating lunch in the break room. I had packed leftovers from the dinner Michael didn't eat the night before, a simple meal, nothing fancy. As I was eating, Rebecca, a young stylist who had recently joined us, walked in and looked at my lunch. "That from home?" she asked, pointing to my container. "Yeah," I said with a shrug. "Just something I put together last night." She paused. "Heidi, I hope I'm not crossing a line here, but have you noticed that Michael is, well, kind of ignoring you? Like, deliberately?" I looked up at her, surprised. "Yeah, lately, yeah." "I only say this because my mom went through the same thing," she continued. "It started with silence, just little moments. Then it became everything. My dad would ignore her, make her feel small. Eventually, she forgot what happiness even felt like. Her words hit hard. Rebecca wasn't being nosy. She was being real. She told me that Michael wasn't just being distant. He was controlling me with silence, manipulating me, making me anxious and uncertain so he could stay in control. "That's twisted," I whispered. "Exactly," she nodded. "And you don't deserve it." After that, something in me shifted. I stopped bending over backward to please him. I still did my work, still cooked dinner, but I stopped waiting up, stopped hoping. That shift didn't go unnoticed. Michael and Victoria became colder, more distant. He stayed out more. She barely acknowledged me. Eventually, Michael stopped coming home for days at a time. I was managing the salon on my own while he floated around like some celebrity entrepreneur. Then, one quiet morning, my day off, I decided to deep clean the house. It was peaceful, the sun shining through the windows. I had music playing. For a moment, I felt almost happy, until I heard the front door unlock. I turned to see Michael and Victoria walking in, completely unannounced. They sat down on the couch like they owned the place. No greeting, just silence. I sighed and went to make tea. As I placed the cups on the table, Victoria chuckled. "Well," she said, "Michael has a child now, so you'll need to pack up and leave." I blinked, unsure if I'd heard her correctly. "A child?" I asked, my voice low and trembling. Michael leaned back on the couch like it was just another Tuesday. "Yeah," he said casually. "Emily is 3 months pregnant." It felt like someone had punched me in the stomach. My hands went cold, and I had to grip the edge of the table to steady myself. Emily. The name floated in the air like smoke. A woman I had only heard mentioned once or twice, one of the new hires, supposedly trained in Paris. Elegant, quiet, the kind of woman Victoria could proudly parade around as the future real wife of her perfect son. Victoria's voice cut through the silence. "We're giving you 2 weeks to move out. It's generous, really. Oh, and you'll be stepping down from your position at the salon. There's no severance, of course. That's business." She actually laughed. I looked from her to Michael, waiting for him to say something. Anything. To soften the blow. To apologize, maybe. But all he did was smirk, like this was the plan all along. "You're replacing me," I said quietly, "with her." "She's more suitable," he replied with a shrug. "Her family is well known. She trained in Europe. She's refined. And with the baby, well, we're moving quickly. It's only right." My breath caught in my throat. So not only was I being kicked out of my home, but I was also being stripped of my work, my passion. The salons I had helped build, every late night, every exhausted morning, every smile I gave to customers, they were taking it all. I needed air. "I'll think about it," I muttered. "Oh, take all the time you need," Victoria said with a fake smile. "Your scattered mind probably needs a while to catch up, poor thing." They left the room like nothing had happened. I stood there, the walls spinning around me. Then my phone rang. "Rebecca." "Heidi," she asked as soon as I picked up. "Are you at home?" "Yeah," I whispered. "I'm coming over." 30 minutes later, she showed up at my door with bags full of groceries and deli food. "I figured you hadn't eaten," she said, slipping off her shoes. "I brought some of my favorites." She moved through this kitchen like it was her own, set out plates, poured us 2 cold glasses of craft beer, and handed me a spoon. "Eat first," she said gently, "then talk." I took a bite of the omelet rice, and tears welled up in my eyes. I hadn't even realized how hungry I was. All morning, I'd only had black coffee and half a slice of bread. My appetite had vanished the moment Michael and Victoria walked in. But now, sitting across from Rebecca, her presence grounding me, I ate. We ate in silence for a while. Then she spoke. "I got the group message about the changes at the salon," she said. "You're being removed?" I nodded, my throat tight. "Michael and his mother want me out of both the apartment and the business. Emily's pregnant. They're getting married." Rebecca was quiet for a beat. Then she asked softly but firmly, "What do you want, Heidi?" I stared at her. "What do I want?" "Yes, not what they want, not what Victoria dictates. What do you want?" The simplicity of this question stunned me. My whole life had been bent around pleasing others. Michael, his mother, the salon. I had stopped asking myself what I needed, what made me happy. Rebecca's eyes didn't waver. "You steer your own life. Nobody else. Not anymore." That night I barely slept, but my mind was clear. I wanted out. The next morning I told Michael I agreed to the divorce. No drama, no yelling, just calm, cold clarity. He seemed a bit surprised, but not enough to protest. I think he thought I was just going to disappear quietly. But I had other plans. I contacted a lawyer, someone a friend of mine had recommended. We drafted papers to demand alimony and a fair division of assets. After all, I had co-built the business. I had rights. I signed a lease on a cozy one-bedroom apartment a few train stops away. I hired movers and packed up my things. Rebecca helped me collect my belongings from the salon so I wouldn't have to see Michael again. She even gathered my contest awards and framed certificates that were still hanging in the office. By the time the 10th day rolled around, the deadline Victoria had given me, I was already gone. The only thing left to do was meet at the lawyer's office. When the day arrived, I dressed carefully, confident but understated. The office was clean and quiet, the air thick with unspoken tension. Michael, Victoria, and a young woman I immediately recognized as Emily walked in, looking smug and superior. Emily was dressed in an expensive coat, her hair styled in loose curls that didn't quite hide the nervous flicker in her eyes. Before my lawyer could say anything, Victoria jumped in. "This is Emily. She'll be Michael's wife once the paperwork is finalized." I nodded without a word. My lawyer calmly asked if they agreed to the terms we had presented. Michael glanced at Emily and said, "Sure, think of it as a severance package. We'll pay whatever." He handed over a sealed envelope. I peeked inside, the full amount. As I signed the divorce documents and passed them back, I looked at all three of them. "I doubt we'll cross paths again," I said, voice calm. "But just in case, I want to make this clear. I will never lift a finger to help any of you, ever." Victoria rolled her eyes. "Oh, please, such dramatics." They left the office laughing. Emily clung to Michael's arm like she had won a prize. I walked out alone, head held high. But I wasn't alone for long. Now, I work at a beautiful salon downtown. They hired me immediately after I applied, thanks to my experience and online portfolio. I'm back to doing what I love, on my own terms. Rebecca joined me a month later. I'd advised her to stay at the old salon just long enough to avoid gossip or fallout, but eventually she quit too. Apparently, after I left, things got messy fast. Emily's Paris background? Fake. One of our old assistants, Thomas, recognized her immediately. "You?" he had laughed. "You're the Emily who couldn't pass a single written test in beauty school, and now you're some world-class stylist?" The lie unraveled publicly. Staff started leaving. Clients stopped coming. Then the police were called in after a public fight between Emily, Michael, and Victoria. The salon shut down a month later. Meanwhile, I was blooming, and for the first time in years, I felt truly free. It was strange at first, waking up in my new apartment without anyone waiting or ignoring me. No silent treatment. No passive-aggressive notes, no heavy footsteps above my head from Victoria pacing her apartment in search of something else to control. Just silence, peaceful silence. I started each day with a slow stretch, coffee on the balcony, and a moment to breathe. I had never realized how much my body was holding on to, tension in my shoulders, my stomach constantly tight. Now it felt like my body was slowly learning to trust the air again. The new salon I worked at was in the heart of the city, bright, modern, and filled with kind, professional people who respected my skills. No drama, no hierarchy games, just good work and better conversations. Clients remembered me from my contest wins and online features. They were delighted to see me again. I had thought starting over would feel like a step down, but it felt like I had leveled up in every way. And Rebecca? She became my right hand. After she joined me, we were unstoppable. Our energy matched so naturally. She often joked that we should open our own salon one day, and honestly, the idea didn't sound so crazy anymore. But something else was happening too, something I hadn't expected. I started dating. It wasn't planned. I wasn't even looking. But during a joint training session between our salon and its sister branch, I met Daniel. He was calm and warm with this steady presence that put me at ease. He didn't try to impress me. He didn't ask invasive questions. He just saw me. We talked over coffee, then dinner, then another dinner. And soon he was calling just to ask how my day went. No pressure, no games. Just a man who genuinely wanted to know how I was feeling. It was a revelation. "Nice," Rebecca teased one morning while we stocked new products. "When's the next date?" I laughed and gave her a playful nudge. "Don't tease your elders." She grinned. "Heidi, you're glowing." And honestly, I was. But despite how good life was getting, I never let my guard down completely. I knew Michael and Victoria too well to believe they'd disappear forever. And sure enough, a letter arrived. Not to my new apartment, no. It came through my lawyer. He called me up saying it had been delivered by hand. A long, emotional letter written by both Michael and Victoria. Apparently their fairy tale had crumbled. Emily, as it turned out, had lied about everything: her background, her education, her so-called training in Paris. And the pregnancy? Faked. She had vanished not long after my divorce was finalized, taking with her a chunk of jewelry, electronics, and some cash she had somehow convinced Michael to gift her. The police got involved. There were investigations, insurance claims, and a very public scandal that spread through the local business community like wildfire. And the salons? After losing key staff and loyal customers, they went under. Fast. The last location closed its doors barely a month after the chaos began. Now the letter said Michael and Victoria had lost everything. They begged for help, claimed I was their only hope. Michael wrote, "You were always the one with a pure heart. I realize that now. You brought stability, class, and care into our lives." Victoria added her part, dripping in dramatics. "Heidi, I misjudged you. I was blinded by pride. You were the best thing that ever happened to my son." I skimmed the letter without emotion. The woman who once mocked me for wanting a wedding of my own vision was now asking me for mercy. The man who dismissed me as just a stylist now wrote about how essential I was to the business, to his life, to everything. I called my lawyer immediately. "Please inform them I don't care," I said calmly, "and that no further letters should be forwarded." He chuckled softly. "Understood." I hung up, walked into the living room, and sat beside my window with a warm cup of tea. The city hummed gently outside. It was a different life, a real one. A few days later, I got lunch with Rebecca at our favorite cafe. "I knew they'd come crawling back," she said, dipping her sandwich into a bowl of soup. "Took longer than I expected, honestly." I smiled. "They've lost everything, and you've gained yourself." That line stayed with me, because it was true. In the years I had spent in that toxic marriage, I had started losing little pieces of myself. I made excuses for other people's behavior. I swallowed my voice. I smiled when I wanted to cry. I dressed to match someone else's taste. I lived in fear of making someone upset. But now I was reclaiming every piece. One night, Daniel and I went on a walk by the river. The sky was a soft shade of lavender, and the air smelled like spring. He slipped his hand into mine, and I didn't pull away. "Do you ever think about going back?" he asked softly. "To Michael?" I laughed. "Not even in my nightmares." He grinned. "Good." We sat on a bench watching boats float by. "I admire you," he said after a moment. "Not just because of what you've overcome, but because of how you carry yourself now, with strength, with joy." I blinked, touched. No one had ever said something like that to me, not in that way. And I realized then, I was finally living a life where I didn't need to prove anything to anyone. I wasn't waiting for praise. I wasn't chasing approval. I was simply being me. The salon thrived. Clients loved our vibe, professional, creative, relaxed. We became known for our signature styles and customer care. And behind it all, Rebecca and I kept pushing each other to grow. One day, as we swept up after a long shift, she turned to me and said, "Heidi, let's open our own place. Not in a year, not someday, this year." I looked at her, surprised. But then I realized my heart had already said yes. Let's do it. Just like that, a seed was planted. Opening our own salon had always been a daydream, one of those someday maybe fantasies we whispered about during late nights sweeping hair off the floor or sipping coffee between appointments. But now it felt real, tangible. And this time I wasn't doing it with a controlling partner hovering over my shoulder, mocking my ideas. I was doing it with someone who respected me, who wanted to build something with me, not on top of me. Rebecca and I started planning immediately. We visited neighborhoods, walked through vacant storefronts, and jotted down ideas in worn notebooks over bowls of spicy ramen. We laughed a lot. We argued a little, but everything we did was grounded in mutual trust and a shared vision. We found a space in a charming corner of the city. Sunlight poured through the windows, and the wooden floors creaked with character. It wasn't flashy, but it had soul. The kind of place you walk into and immediately feel like you belong. We signed the lease with shaky hands and racing hearts, and then the real work began. We painted walls, designed the layout, picked every piece of furniture ourselves. I even helped install some of the lighting. Rebecca joked that I should add electrician to my resume. We called it the Revival Room, because that's exactly what it was, for both of us. Opening day came fast. We were nervous. What if no one showed up? What if people didn't care? But we didn't need to worry. Our first week was booked solid. Clients from our old salon showed up in droves, some hugging me like long-lost friends. "Heidi, we missed you," they'd say. "It's not the same without your touch." The compliments warmed my heart. But more than that, they reminded me of who I had always been. Not the scared woman Michael tried to make me. Not the silent wife who waited by the door. I was a creator, a leader, a woman of purpose. And soon, our little salon became something more than a business. It became a community. We had regulars who brought in baked goods, college girls who came in for their first professional haircut, grandmothers who wanted a new look just for fun. We hosted workshops, styled models for charity shows, and even had a corner wall where local artists could hang their work. The revival room was thriving, and so was I. A few months later, I was at the front desk, tidying up receipts, when the door opened and Rebecca walked in, carrying a bright bouquet of sunflowers. "What's the occasion?" I asked, raising an eyebrow. She smirked. "No occasion, just a reminder that you deserve sunshine." I laughed, shaking my head. "You're the one who brings the sunshine around here." We placed the flowers near the mirror wall and went back to work, but I couldn't help glancing at them throughout the day. It was silly, but they reminded me of how far I'd come. That night, Daniel met me after work. We strolled through a nearby park, hand in hand, the path lit by soft golden lamplight. "I heard a rumor," he said, grinning. "Oh yeah? Someone told me you're the co-owner of the best salon in town." I nudged him with my elbow. "I heard that same rumor." He turned serious for a moment. "I'm proud of you, Heidi. You've built something incredible." My eyes softened. I couldn't have done it without the people who believed in me. He squeezed my hand. "Well, I'm one of them, and I'm not going anywhere." I didn't say anything, just leaned my head against his shoulder. For the first time in a long time, the future didn't feel like a cliff. It felt like a garden, wide open, blooming, and full of color. Sometime later, Rebecca received a message through one of her old contacts at Michael's former salon. It was gossip mostly. Apparently, after their fall from grace, Michael and Victoria had moved in together in a small rental apartment on the edge of town. The business was gone, the money gone. And Emily? Gone too. She had taken everything not nailed down and skipped town. No one had heard from her since. I didn't even flinch at the news. Some part of me might have once imagined a moment of satisfaction, some grand revenge where I'd smile smugly and say, "Told you so." But instead, all I felt was nothing. They were simply no longer part of my story. I had rewritten the ending. One afternoon, while working with a client, a lovely woman in her 60s, who wanted a wild streak of lavender in her silver hair, she said something that stuck with me. "You have gentle hands, Heidi," she murmured. "Not just skilled, but kind. It's like you're giving care, not just a haircut." Her words landed deep, because I wasn't just cutting hair. I was healing, one person at a time, and with every snip and style, I was also healing myself. I used to think love meant compromise, endlessly folding myself to fit someone else's shape. I thought being a good partner meant shrinking down so the other could shine brighter. But now I know love is something else entirely. Love is a partnership, not a power struggle. Love makes you feel seen, not invisible. Love is when someone joins your life, not tries to take it over. I look back sometimes, not in regret, but in gratitude, because the version of me who stayed quiet, who doubted herself, who begged for scraps of affection, that woman didn't disappear. She evolved. She rose. She became the woman who co-owns the most beloved salon in the city, who laughs loud, who walks into a room without apologizing for her presence. She became the woman who learned to steer her life with steady hands, no longer afraid of crashing. So, if you're reading this or hearing it, and you're in a place where someone is making you feel small, unworthy, or forgotten, I want you to know something. You're not alone, and you don't have to stay there. You are not difficult. You are not too much. You are not the problem just because someone else is unwilling to grow. You are allowed to want peace. You are allowed to walk away. You are allowed to build something beautiful from the wreckage they left behind. If I could do it, if I could rise from the ashes of betrayal, heartbreak, and manipulation, then you can too. And when you do, when you finally take that first step toward your freedom, your joy, your truth, I'll be cheering for you from my chair at the revival room, with sunflowers on the desk, and a heart that's finally fully mine again.